Very good. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you all as always. Welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. My name is James Osborne. I'm the co-founder of the Recruitment Network. We run these LinkedIn Lives pretty much every week or two now as an opportunity just to share some ideas, have sort of a bit of a lunch and learn. So if you've got your lunch with you, hopefully you're going to learn at the same time. Today's LinkedIn Live, we've entitled Increasing Team Performance by Building a Top-Tier Talent Pool. I've got a bit of a backdrop to this. I suppose 2023, I think if you look across the recruitment sector, I think it'd be fair to say has been really all about the people. How do we get more out of our people whilst at the same time ensuring that they're okay? How do we attract the best talent whilst making sure that we're holding on to the best talent at the same time in our businesses? How do we eliminate underperformance and maybe remove those people who maybe right now aren't fit for purpose for the next part of the journey in our businesses? So a lot of things been going on across the sector in 2023 in particular, really driven by, I suppose, the power of the people. So I think understanding how you can better engage, better motivate, better incentivize, better manage your people, I don't think has ever been as important as it probably is right now. So we've invited a very good friend of ours, Amy Roeks, who's director of My People, one of the TRM Gold partners, who we do a lot of work with. We're huge fans of these guys. To give us some more insights, I suppose, from her network of analysts, psychologists, and data scientists that have actually worked and supported some of the Britain's sort of greatest supporting elites over the world, and see what we can do and what we can learn from that with our business as well as recruitment leaders. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is your first LinkedIn Live, so I hope you don't feel nervous about doing one of these, but welcome. And I'm going to hand it straight over to you, because I know you put together a bit of a sort of a slide deck you're going to walk us through.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's really good to be here. Yes, I have some slides that I will present. This is where we find out if I have any technical issues. There we go. Right. So we should be able to see the slides now.
No, not yet. Oh, coming up now. Yeah, perfect. Got them.
Perfect. Okay. So this won't be death by PowerPoint. So I've just got some slides to go through. And James, if you want to stop me at any point, feel free, and we can have a chat around each one. But really, I think to start off, I want to just say that performance, when we talk about performance, typically or quite often we can accidentally fall into that managing performance side of it, where it's quite reactive, and actually understanding performance and all the things that happen before that point can be really helpful to increase performance and to build those top tier talent teams. So it's about, a holistic endeavour that goes beyond just addressing problems. So understanding what motivates the individuals, because everyone is different, building really good working relationships between managers and their people, providing development opportunities, identifying the root cause of issues as well, not just necessarily being reactive to the situation that's at hand, because otherwise we find ourselves in kind of like that firefighting stage, and also maintaining engagement as well. And doing this proactively through effective communication, and really looking at individuals as individuals and not as a collective employee group, can really help that. So what we'll be talking about today is we're going to talk about some incentivization. We'll explore some different options. We're also going to talk about authentic people management and how that can foster real trust and good working relationships. How to identify whether someone isn't performing, perhaps because there's a capability issue versus whether or not it's a conduct issue, or perhaps they're not engaged with the organisation. How to develop and how to motivate. And then at the end, we will spend a very short time on managing performance. But ideally, if we do all of the other things right, the less time we have to spend actually managing performance, essentially. So if we focus on incentivization first, obviously we've got the traditional bonus and commission schemes, EMI schemes and share options, which you quite often see. But there are lots of innovative ways and more personalised ways to be able to incentivise your team. And the key is to be able to understand what's going to motivate the people that are working for you. So I've got a list here. We've got cash. We know cash is king. You can use vouchers. You can use leave or time off, team activities, your recognition, which I think doesn't get enough reward in terms of its ability to really motivate people. Learning opportunities and well-being or wellness initiatives. And if we explore those a little bit further, so cash, like I said, that's your traditional approach. This provides immediate financial gratification. We can tailor it to specific objectives. We can tailor it to targets and KPIs. And typically you tend to see this quite a lot. Vouchers offer flexibility so that individuals can choose where they want to spend these vouchers. So it will align with their individual preferences. Leave or is obviously time off, and that enhances work-life balance. And I don't know if, I assume everyone on this call has probably noticed this, that over the last few years, especially when you're talking to candidates and talking to your employees, time off is something that's even more of a priority now than it ever has been. I think my experience, certainly over the last couple of years, is that if you're talking to an individual, if there's less than 25 days holiday offered, for example, it can be quite a challenge to attract that person to that organisation. So I think time off is probably one of those things that is really important right now, probably more so than it has been in the past. Um, Team activities, it fosters camaraderie, collaboration, a real positive work environment. Recognition, it's quite simple, but it acknowledges and celebrates achievement. It boosts morale. And I think one thing to consider when you're dealing with recognition is some people quite like public recognition, and other people it absolutely terrifies them. So again, it's about knowing our people and understanding whether or not they would like that recognition to be shared publicly, or if it's something they'd quite like in a one-to-one or on a kind of a quiet basis. Um, Learning opportunities, so development empowers employees to grow professionally. It might be that an employee is particularly enjoying an aspect of their work, or they're doing really well, they're thriving in that one particular aspect. And it might be that there are opportunities that you can work with them to grow that and to explore that even further. And that can be a really good incentive for them to continue. And then wellness, so physical or mental health initiatives, it promotes healthier and more balanced lifestyle. I was working with a business about a year ago, and they scrapped their entire incentivisation schemes that they were using. So they were previously quite traditional with the bonus and commission and things like that, offering time off in lieu if someone had worked extra hours because of overtime. And they scrapped it. And what they did is they increased the basic salary to basically match what on average they had been paying out on people's earnings. And they changed it so that they would offer the learning opportunities, so developing and helping them grow professionally, and also they focused on wellness. And so if someone had put in a lot of work or had done really well on a particular role that they'd been working with, they said to them, you know, you've worked really hard for us, have some time back on us. You know, go take a day for yourself, spend some time with your family, go to a spa, do what you want to do. And that really incentivized people. And that's because they did a lot of work ahead of time to understand what would motivate people and what their employees were looking for and what was going to keep them.
Amy, is your recommendation with this is that should we have, let's say I've got a company, 100 people in my business, I've got different people who are incentivized by different things. Some want cash, some want time, some want learning opportunities. Should we as business owners and leaders in businesses have multiple options for people? Because most people normally have one incentive program or two incentive programs. It doesn't necessarily work for everyone. How wide and varied should we go here, and how tailored should we go, I suppose?
I guess it really depends on the size of the organization. If you've got 100 plus employees, it's going to be very, very difficult to have a personalized approach for every single person. That's much easier if you've got less employee numbers. But I think you can have a blanket approach. So you might say that, you know, our incentive scheme is vouchers, but then that allows that personalization for the person specifically. Or it might be that there are options. So we can either pay out commission, we can offer time off, or there is this sum, and it might be that there's a learning opportunity that you're particularly interested in. So this is the reward. How do you want to capitalize on that?
Okay.
So we could have one blanket approach, but still make it personalized if possible. One thing I haven't put on this list that is often quite used, and it's not a bad scheme, but employee of the month. And I think for some businesses that works really well. The only thing I would say is consider your employees, because sometimes what happens is that it really motivates the person that's got employee of the month and potentially can demotivate anyone else that hasn't got employee of the month. But that really comes down to personalities. So you know your people within your organization. So I think it's one of those things that is used quite widely and can continue to be used, but it's just one of those things I think to be aware of, to make sure it's having the effect that you want it to have, for everyone, not just the individuals that are quite likely to achieve that employee of the month. One way to change that, or to improve that, is that the employee of the month is nominated by colleagues. Then you are less likely to get any kind of resentment bill or anything like that. So if we move on to authentic people management then, so the reason I talk about authenticity is because when managers connect with their team members, it fosters trust and open communication. It has a real positive impact. And I think we will all, through all of our stages of life, we will all meet one person or a couple of people that we just don't gel with. And with the best will in the world, we're not going to gel with absolutely everyone. And that happens in management positions as well. And it's often something that you can't necessarily control. And it's personality clashes, they happen. And I think that's fine. And we can manage that. But where possible, if we can build authentic relationships with our team, it will really help improve performance and maintain that. It inspires loyalty. So employees that have trust in their line manager, it inspires loyalty. They'll go above and beyond. They will go that extra mile when they need to. They will feel valued, feel understood. And there's lots of reasons why, which I'll go into now, why authenticity can really help improve performance. The first one is open communication. So if an employee feels comfortable sharing ideas or concerns or feedback, it leads to better problem solving and innovation. Also, what it does is if there is that open communication and an employee makes a mistake or something goes wrong, if there's that open communication, that relationship is there, they're more likely to come to you right at the beginning and say, this has happened. Can you help me come to a solution? I'm not really sure where to go from here. Or they might have a solution, but they're just keeping you in the loop. If that open communication isn't there, they're more likely to hold on to it. And then you'll find out further down the line, and then it's a bigger issue than it ever needed to be. And so having that trust and that relationship there, just communication wise, can really help. Empowerment and autonomy. So it empowers employees, it gives them the autonomy to make decisions. They're more likely to take ownership of their work. As a manager, you're less likely to have to give prompts and preempt them or reminders or anything like that, or check in on them, how you're getting on with this. They're probably more likely to come to you and say, right, this is where I'm at with this situation. This role's taking a little bit longer, and this is my process. So it means that as a manager, you can be a lot more hands-off and confident that they're managing everything that they should. A trusted line manager provides guidance and support, enhances professional development and skill building. What this also does is, as a line manager, you will be able to know if one of your employees is looking to increase skills or experience in a certain area. They're more likely to speak to you about that than source that elsewhere in another organisation. They're less likely to start looking at what options are available to them in other businesses. If you connect with your employees, you're much more likely to be aligned to the same values, which essentially means that they are also aligned to the business and the objectives that the business wants to achieve. So that connectivity can really help that piece as well. And it reduces stress and turnover. So as an individual, if you was looking for another role and you go through the process and you get offered a job, if you think about it, you know exactly what that job is going to entail because you've got the job description. You know what offer is on the table because you've got the contract, the salary, the hours of work, everything like that. You know about the company because you've done your research as part of the interview process. You've looked at their website. You might know a bit about the culture. If it's on Glassdoor, for example, you might have looked through employee reviews. The one unknown about moving to another employer is what relationship you will have with your new manager. And that's the one certainty that employees have in their current organisation. So they know if they've got a good relationship with their manager, it's a risk to move elsewhere. So it really reduces that turnover. I think if you speak to anyone who is considering leaving a job, or if you think back to when you've done it previously, what was holding you back? Quite often it's the relationships, and quite often that's what can keep people. So trust and relationships and that authentic people management can really help to maximize performance. And I don't think, to be honest, I don't think we talk about it enough. I think we talk a lot about incentivization and things like that, but actually that relationship can really, really help.
It's quite tricky though, isn't it? Because being an authentic manager sometimes means you have to drop down your guard a little bit and be, and I think sometimes people are nervous about doing that because they feel, especially in a tough market, they feel as a leader and as a manager, I need to put up this front. And maybe sometimes that's not authentic. It's actually not how they're feeling and what they're going through.
Absolutely. And it can make, if you do have that relationship, it can make difficult conversations even more difficult.
Mm.
But the hope is that if you have that relationship, there'll be less need for difficult conversations, because you'll have all that open communication. You'll know exactly what's going on at any time, and employees will feel very confident in discussing concerns with you. So it should hopefully avoid that. But yeah, absolutely, it can be very difficult.
Sure.
I just want to touch quickly on anti-fragility. So Nassim Nicholas Taleb wrote this book called Anti-Fragile. And it talks a lot about anti-fragile systems. So a good example of one of these systems is our immune system. So essentially, when our immune system or our bodies are exposed to viruses or bacteria, the immune system defends our body, but it also learns from it and creates antibodies. So that if we get infected by the same virus again, our bodies learn from it, it's stronger, it's easier for us to defend ourselves against that. And it's kind of similar in like management. So we know that people are unpredictable. I'm sure everybody on this call has had a situation at some point where it's something they've never come across before. It's not something they could have expected in a million years. And if you had one already, you'll probably have a few more throughout your career. But anti-fragility is about learning from that. So understanding what happened at that time and reflecting. So looking backwards so that we can look forwards. So dealing with the situation at hand there and then, being reactive to it, but then also changing our response for the future and learning from it. So just wanted to touch on that quickly. It's a really interesting book if anyone is interested in looking into it further. But it really does help those kind of unpredictable situations, which of course people are.
I love that comment that they wrote on there about thriving amidst change. And I would even adapt to that and say basically what it should be is that thriving because of change. And I think it's a lesson that so many leaders can learn in this marketplace that's so changing all the time, is how do we use the change to our advantage to create more opportunities and for us to build better businesses. I think it's one thing that's held a lot of people back is their ability to adapt to change or even embrace change in the first place.
Absolutely. It's about having that growth mindset, isn't it?
Completely.
So not reacting to certain things and fixing problems, but actually how can we improve this? How can we make it better? And having learning opportunities at every stage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one of the things that I often get asked when we're talking about performance is how can you tell whether someone is underperforming because of a capability issue, because they physically don't have the ability to do it, or whether or not it's because of a performance concern where someone's, either being a bit lazy or they're disengaged or something like that. So I've just put some points on here that can help you spot those capability concerns. So I think the first thing is obviously evaluate whether an employee is meeting job requirements. Are they meeting none of the job requirements, or are there aspects of the role that they're not meeting? Pay attention to quality, timelines, their ability to adapt to changing demands. Quite often, these issues will be specifically related to skills gaps. They're less likely to be related to behaviours and things like that. Someone who is struggling with capability might shy away from certain responsibilities. They also might be particularly quiet during meetings. So if you spot any of these, it's probably a capability issue, in which case it's about developing the individual. And if we talk about a couple of ways of developing, so I've put here bottom right 360-degree feedback, which is probably very commonly used. And it's a good tool to be able to guide someone's development plan, but it doesn't necessarily develop them. But it's something to do at the beginning so that you can really help understand exactly where the development areas are. Because quite often, if someone's not performing because of capability, they don't know what they don't know. So if you sit down with them and say, okay, what are you struggling with? It can be sometimes really hard for them to actually articulate that and to determine themselves what the issues are. So doing that 360 feedback at the beginning can really help focus the development plan. Doing a strengths assessment, so kind of a bit like a SWOT analysis really, but on an individual. So identify someone's strengths and how these can be applied to the situation. Because when someone isn't performing, they will know that they're not performing. And sometimes it can put someone in a bit of a spiral, and it's very difficult for them to see the wood through the trees and be able to understand, okay, if I do this slightly differently, that might help this situation. I'll get a better outcome from this if I just change that aspect. So sitting down with someone and talking about their strengths and how these can be applied to different situations can really change their perspective and then get them out of that funk, essentially, because it can be very overwhelming when someone is either new or they're not performing because of it's a new role or for whatever reason. Another option is coaching. And coaching is a really, really valuable tool. And it's all about asking questions and asking and drawing out the information from the individual. But they have to have some kind of basis of knowledge, because otherwise they don't have the knowledge there to be able to draw from, or they don't have the experience there to draw from. And it can be very uncomfortable for both parties if we do coaching to the wrong person. If you do think they do have that basis of knowledge there, it's really valuable to get them to decide what their next action will be, to get them to understand what they could have done better. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from all practical experiences. You can use theoretical experiences as well, and that's absolutely fine. They still follow the same process. But what it does is it changes the neurological pathways by going through this process. So it forms habits and changes behavior, ultimately, to improve result. So coaching is really, really key. It's just important to make sure that we're using it when someone already has an element of knowledge that they can then build on, because otherwise it's the case they'll need training specifically as opposed to coaching. And then the other thing I've put here is action learning, which is based on real life scenarios, and it's a team effort. And so it helps collaboration, and it helps build skills and knowledge. And the way it does that is because you've got lots of different people in the mix, you've got lots of different voices. So what works for one person might work for someone else. They've just not anticipated it before. Or someone might come up with a new idea that someone else hasn't thought of, but actually that's now in their bank. They've got that for future use. Or someone might identify risks that someone else hasn't. So it's all about knowledge sharing, and it's all about building a team environment, of like a collaborative team environment where everyone shares best practice and everyone helps each other and brings each other up to a similar level of performance. Because we know that quite often we will have our star performers, and what action learning does, it kind of brings everyone up to the same level to embrace that consistency.
I've got no questions on that one.
No, that's fine. I thought I'd give it a gap. Okay, so the other type of performance concern is when there's an engagement issue. So the person can do the job, but they're just not particularly engaged. And the way to spot these concerns is to understand whether there are deviations from their established performance standard. So have they previously been performing well, and has it dropped? Has there been a dip across the board? Has there been a dip in specific areas? Assess the consistency of output. Are there certain times in the month, for example, that they perform really well, but actually when it gets closer to kind of targets and things like that, do they then dip? So understanding where the issue is. More often than not, concerns are related to behaviours rather than a skills gap. So it might be that there's a change in attitude. It might be that they seem to care less. They don't go above and beyond like they used to, and things like that. They might be making silly mistakes that they haven't done previously. So these are all examples of when someone might not be performing because they're starting to become disengaged. And if someone's disengaged, we need to motivate them. And there's a couple of theories that I just wanted to talk through here. So we've got the self-determination theory, which is autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So autonomy is where someone has the need to have control over their actions and decisions. Competence is where someone has the need to feel effective and capable in their endeavours. And relatedness is when someone has the need to form meaningful and positive connections with others. And the basis of this theory is that if someone has autonomy, they have competence, and they have relatedness, they will be motivated. And there is no reason why they wouldn't be motivated if we can tick all of these things off. The second theory is Hertzberg's two-factor theory, which suggests that job satisfaction and dissatisfaction are influenced by two separate sets of factors. And if we think of hygiene factors, this is what prevents someone from taking that dip. So if, for example, this is your salary, your working conditions, your job security. So as long as we've got these hygiene factors, it stops someone dropping and dipping their motivation. But what it doesn't do is help someone increase their motivation. So that's where the motivators come in, and this is your recognition, achievement, responsibility, and opportunities for personal growth. So essentially, this theory suggests we need both. So we need the hygiene factors to stop us dropping, and we need the motivators to increase our performance and our motivation. If
Really, so
you're
can I touch on Amy? So super quick. Sorry. So if you look at those first three, right, autonomy, relatedness, and competence,
yeah.
we've been in a world this year in particular where, from an autonomy point of view, a lot of people feel they've been out of control with decision making because there's so much external factors influencing the way we can do things and businesses and stuff. From a relatedness and that piece about connecting with others, a lot of people feel quite disconnected, especially with sort of remote working and everything else.
Yeah.
And then from a competence point of view, because of the market, a lot of people feel they're underperforming. So we're in a world at the moment, in theory, where there's a hell of a lot of demotivated people in theory, because almost outside of their factors, it's stuff outside of their control that they can influence.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough world out there at the moment, isn't it? I think with the relatedness, the connectivity, I think that's something that most companies now are getting better at. We've got the use of Teams, we've got the use of Zoom. I think a lot of companies, I don't know if you've noticed this as well, but are starting to go back to the workplace in some form, whether it's 5 days a week or a couple of days a week. And I think we are getting better as a working nation of building that connectivity back again. I think we went through a long period of time where people could go days without speaking to someone, and that was becoming a real problem. But I think it's about understanding, what we can do. We're not going to be able to have people in meetings every single day, because it's just not conducive to being able to get everything done. But what can we do? And put that question back to employees as well. How do you want to connect with your colleagues? Do you want to do a weekly call, a weekly catch up? Do you want to spend 1 day a week in the office? Do you want to do more socials, and asking them what they want? Because I think that's changed a lot, which is also very difficult, is what people are after.
Definitely. I think I've seen three things that have worked really well this year to relate to those three things. The first one, from the autonomy piece, where people they've just come up with this strategy to crack on. It's irrespective of what's happening externally. So they've been really strong with their vision, their roadmap, their journey. On the hybrid working piece and the relatedness, I think people have just come better at. I don't mind if people have people working remotely or full time in the office. What I care about, if they're having people working remotely, they manage them properly. They create the infrastructure. They don't just send them home as they crack on.
Absolutely.
And then the underperformance piece is pretty simple to me, and we've been working on this a lot across the TRN community. It's around optimization. So basically optimizing the way our businesses run and work to be able to create more performance. I think so. I'm not saying I wasn't putting my hand up and saying that the world's against us and we've got no chance against it. It's quite the opposite. But a lot of people do feel a little bit, it's like it's tough out there. What do I do?
Yeah. It is, absolutely. But again, that goes back to that growth mindset piece, doesn't it?
100%.
So yes, it's tough out there, but what can we do about it? How can we adapt internally to make sure that these things are still happening? Our employees still feel connected. They still feel that they can be managed. And you're right, it is difficult to manage people remotely, I think, but there are ways of doing it. And I think we've improved a lot over, like, in the working world, where we were pre-pandemic. And autonomy, it's about making sure that we have the autonomy and we feel confident in making the decisions we do have control over, not necessarily the ones that we don't. One thing to say on this, so if you're trying to motivate an employee and all of these things are in place, so we've ticked the boxes and we've got the two factors there and it's working well and they're still not motivated, it might be that it's not work related at all. So there might be something going on at home that we're not aware of. So then it's a case of having a conversation with them, between the employee and the manager, to understand if there is any kind of extenuating circumstances that we need to be aware of, so that we can factor that in for any future discussion, essentially, and how you can manage that and support that employee. Because often it's not work related and it's something that's going on outside, that's beyond our control. If there's nothing outside of work, if they're still not motivated, or there is the capability, you've tried developing them, it's just not working, or that connectivity isn't there, so they're not connecting to the business, not necessarily just you as a manager, but they're not connected to the business, we might get to the stage where we have to manage performance. like I said at the beginning, ideally we'd do everything else first, right? We get much less of this stuff, but it does happen. It's bound to happen. And the only thing I'd say on managing performance is that it's necessary when there's a sudden decline in performance, unanticipated problems, or significant disruptions that demand immediate attention. Issues should be addressed swiftly to reduce the longer term impact, because things spread. So if someone isn't performing, it can cause resentment, and then other people in the team might be thinking, well, if they're getting away with not doing it, why am I working till silly o'clock at night to try and get things done? So it is important to restore that stability and be able to manage performance straight off the bat. And I've put here in blue, make decisions analytically and rationally. So when you're deciding what action you're going to take, don't think of the person. Think almost coldly and really calculated. This is what we need to do to improve things. This is what the business needs. And then when it comes to actually executing the plan, flip it, do a 180 and execute the plan with empathy and understanding. That's when the human element needs to come into it. So make decisions rationally, execute it empathetically. And I think that's something that's quite difficult to do. Because they are people, and if you're a people manager, you're a good people person, and so that can be really tough. But that's something that I think really helps if you almost take a two-pronged approach to this kind of thing. And that's it from me.
Fantastic, Amy. Absolutely super. I'm conscious of time because we're pretty much coming to the end of our session, actually. So I don't think we're going to get a chance for a proper Q&A. It's interesting. It's the CIPD conference at the moment, and there's some data being bantered around at the conference that engagement across the UK is around 10%. So engagement levels are sitting at around about 10%, which is frighteningly horrible for all sorts of different types of reasons. So the stuff that you've talked about today is so critically important to get on top of. It really, really is. So I'd highly recommend anybody who's listened to today to reach out to Amy and her team, or listen to these slides again, or go back through some of the content we've talked about, and actually just really think about what are some of the things that you are doing as business owners, as leaders, as peers within your own business, to help people increase engagement, because there's a lot of real simple stuff that comes off the back of that, but we've got to make an effort to do so, I think. And if you're sitting at 10% engagement rate within your business, you've probably got a very disengaged business, which probably means you are underperforming or will be underperforming against what you potentially could do. That's the reality, I think. Amy, listen, absolutely superb to see you. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to reach out to you, Amy, what's the best way to contact you guys at My People?
You can either contact me on LinkedIn, or we will share the slides with you so that you can share those out, and I'll put my contact details on there.
Fantastic. Absolutely superb. Amy, lovely to see you guys as always. Thank you. And really great insight. Those of you who joined us today, thank you once again, as always. Lots of work to be done here, I think. So let's stay on top of this one, because it does have a huge impact on so many different facets of your business. Other than that, have a fantastic rest of the afternoon. We'll see you at the next LinkedIn Live. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks for having me.